All right, I think we're now live. Sorry for that. I think we're now up and running. Let me know if everything's okay. Hello, welcome to the first stream of 2021. It's been a while since we've done these, so it's good to be back. It used to be just me, but now we've got Icon as well, who's going to be answering your questions and going through some things. Yeah, first things first is that we're still working from home, so apologies for this background noise. The mic setup's not ideal here, so you'll probably be hearing my laptop whirring in the background right now, so sorry about that. Hopefully you'll get used to it. But yeah, what we'll be doing in the stream is we'll be answering your questions. We'll be basically doing some little demos and stuff. We've got some questions from people from social, so we'll go through those first. If you've got any questions in the chat, pop them in and we'll do them as we go. I'm just checking we're all working now still. Yeah, so we've got, like I said, like I mentioned, these questions from social media and that, and some of them are about pitch and stuff. So what we're going to do is, after we've gone through some of the questions, we're going to do a section specifically on pitch and working with melodies and pitch kind of side of Dubler. So if you've got any questions about that side of things, if you can hold on until we're doing this kind of pitch section, then we'll be able to just all do it in one go. But anything else, yeah, just hop in the chat and we'll go through them. So I guess we'll just dive straight in with some of these questions. So first question we had one on Twitter from Shogo Mike, who is basically asking about the difference in versions when you go to download Dubler. So he was saying that how come the Mac OS is Dubler 1.3.3 and the Windows version is 1.3.1? The only reason for that basically is that there's been some Mac OS specific bug fixes. There's no difference in terms of functionality or what Dubler does. So Windows and Mac are exactly the same. They're just different versions because of specific bug fixes to different operating systems. Pretty standard stuff. But yeah, all right. Next question. We had Peppermint247 on Instagram asked, what programs/platforms does this work with? So Dubler works with anything that receives a MIDI input. So all Dubler does is uses a virtual MIDI kind of port to send MIDI information out. Just the same as if you think of it as like a physical generic MIDI keyboard. It works with anything that takes a MIDI input. So yeah, if you use something that has a MIDI in, you can use Dubler with it. So that's it. Baby Chino Beat said, can you make a cello pickup that does the same thing? Well, at the moment we're just focused on the voice. That would be quite cool. There's some other companies out there who do some really interesting things like that. I know there's a few guitar pickup companies that do sort of MIDI to convert audio to MIDI conversion. So maybe check some of those out. But for now we're just focusing on the voice. What else have we got? So we also had a question from Daniel Weltraum, who asked, what were your first obstacles you had to overcome learning to use Dubler? So this is an interesting question. It's definitely something that's brand new, and maybe obstacles is the wrong word, but there is a bit of a learning curve, and it's something to get used to. And it's different for everyone. I can talk for myself personally in saying that one of the first things I guess I had to overcome to learn to use Dubler was basically the confidence of my voice. I never really used my voice before when it came to music composition. I'd classically do just instrumental pieces. So just learning to use my voice. The first thing in terms of Dubler is that it reacts really well to more confident sounds. If you're singing a melody and going like and you're going ba 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 ba, the difference is going to be really drastic. So I had to just basically make sure I was being expressive and confident and loud. So I think that was probably the biggest thing when I first started using Dubler, was just learning to be comfortable with my voice and using it as an input. What about you, Arkin? How was it for you?
I mean, I think it's about finding which syllables best for you, and so like you said, when you sing without confidence, as opposed to doing confident syllables like b, cha, ka, kind of very, very like transient heavy syllables, it can be hard to have Dubler respond the way you want to. And the same, it's not only for the drum triggers. The same applies to pitch as well. So you don't. So everyone will find a syllable, whether I'm singing ba ba or cha cha cha, and this changes according to everyone's voice. The software will of course respond different to everyone's voice, so it's definitely worth spending some time finding which syllables respond best to your voice or which syllables to use, and see your results increase greatly after you find those syllables for you. Yeah, that was a big obstacle, and it's even slowly coming together for me too, even though I've been at it for like 3-4 months now maybe.
Yeah, I think once you get over the initial thing, it's just about fine tuning, but it doesn't take too long. I wouldn't say to get going. Another thing for me was just this beatboxing aspect in general as well, which was I don't like to use the word beatboxing because it makes you think of beatboxers and the sounds that they make, which work really well with Dubler, but seems a little bit difficult and a little bit hard to kind of get into in terms of triggering. So I had to kind of separate in my head this idea of like not trying to beatbox, but just making sounds that I'm using to trigger drum samples. So when I'm using triggers now, when I first started, I was trying to do those classic sounds of like a kick and a snare and a hi-hat. But now when I use it, it's completely different, where I'm just actually using sounds that are easy for me to make, and then I assign them to whatever I want to use. So they're mostly quite similar, just clicks, like my kick, but sort of my 3 kind of core sounds will just be like a, and they're just 3 quite similar sounds, but they're easy enough for me to make, like, and I'm comfortable with them. And then I can introduce other sounds, like a or whatever for other stuff. But yeah, that was a big thing, was just trying to think of the triggers not as a beatboxing input, but just as a voice input for drums. Yeah.
And also about the beatboxing aspect, that kind of makes you think like you have to do everything at the same time. You have to do the kick and the hi-hat and the snare at the same time, but you actually, it's pretty advanced, and it's not easy to do that. So another good idea is when you're recording yourself, just start with your kick and snare, copy your channel, and then play a hat, and then play one element, or you can go one at a time. So you don't have to record all elements at once. Going one by one, taking it slow, can also help you reach some great ideas.
Yeah, for sure. Right, we'll carry on with a couple more questions, and then we'll move into doing some stuff. I don't want to talk too much. What other questions have we got on here? We've got someone was asked, could you include a mic stand thingy? Hopefully we're still, in the grand scheme of things, we're still brand new, so we're just kind of focusing on just the mic and the software, and we're still a small team. But yeah, hopefully in the future we can do some add-ons, some mic stands or mic covers, all sorts of different things. But yeah, sorry, for now it's just
now,
go on.
Yeah, I would say right now, there's lots of cheap options on Amazon for under $10, £10. There's this one I have here, just attaches to the table and it's flexible. You can move it around, very flexible. So, there are lots of great options, cheap options on the internet right now too.
Yeah, the mic's just a standard mic as well. It's just like a standard sort of condenser mic, so it fits in pretty much anything. And someone was this might be something to do with pitch, so maybe we'll move into this later, but someone was asking about any further configurations to help with the mic. So this is a little bit to do with pitch, so we'll touch on this more in depth later, but I guess it's worth noting now about just using the mic in general and how you use it. There are a few things to kind of note. So when you're using the mic, if you're using kind of the pitch side of things specifically, and if you're singing kind of like really up close, like it will be fine. You should get decent results. I'm quite guilty of that. I do that quite a lot. But when you're using it like that, there's a lot of noise and your lips are touching. There's a lot of rumble. So it's if you keep it slightly away, the pitch is cleaner. It's a bit easier for the software to kind of understand what you're doing. It doesn't have to kind of cut away all the rest of the rumble and noise and stuff. So yeah, if you just keep it away slightly from your voice instead of getting it up like this, you should hopefully get a bit better results. Also, consistency with that kind of thing as well. With triggers, if I train my triggers like this, going like, and then when I'm using it, I'm kind of over here going like, the sound's quite different to what I've trained because of the sort of the distance. And you can move the mic around. It's pretty good at, you know, changing these things and responding to the variations of your sound. But it's just important that consistency is key for, yeah, accurate triggers. So yeah, that's just one thing to note in terms of like using the mic with Dubler. But the other stuff and kind of configurations we'll touch on a little bit later. All right, and someone asked before we go into pitch. Someone said, "Can we see some samples of music created that's not electronica based or electronic, such as strings, brass, etc.?" Yeah, sure. So we can do this. Our first, I guess, first thing to say is that this is not the type of thing I do or make normally, so I cannot promise the quality of of what we will do. But I will show you just, I guess, how you could use it to just lay down kind of drums, bass, kind of like acoustic sounding instruments. So let me flick around these screens a bit. All right. Hopefully you should see Logic now. I mean, I'll do a little one. Have you got anything with this kind of thing, Icon, as well? Do you want to do it afterwards?
Yeah. I've loaded some. I've loaded also a bass and a string patch and.
Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, I'll do a little one first, and then we can cross over. And I don't know what you've made actually. Maybe yours is gonna make mine look terrible. We'll see.
No, I didn't really make it. I just have the instrument set up, so with a drum loop. So let's see.
So yeah, first of all, I'm in Logic. So when using Logic, one thing I'll just make sure I've got controls on and not triggers. Logic is a little bit not as great at separating MIDI channels. You can do it if you have multiple ones with multi-tracking on, but when I'm just doing one instrument, I just want to make sure I'm always just got one on at a time to avoid unwanted notes. So I've got my controls here. I'm in a scale. I'm in G minor pentatonic, which is good. I'll just stick with that. Stickiness and input level, I always have them, just leave them as they are by default because I don't use it in any particularly drastic way, so just leave that as they are. And then I've got this bass. Where's my mic? Here we go. I've got this bass here. Boom, boom. Okay, that's high. I want to lower the octave. Boom, boom, boom. Again, like I mentioned, it doesn't sound particularly great or bassy. Boom, 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 boom. But it will do for demonstration purposes. Boom, 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 boom. So let's just lay a bass line on first. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, that's fine. Boom, 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 boom. Alright, so that's just a simple, quick one. And then just want to quantize these, make sure it's in time.
Nice.
Maybe move that, turn this metronome off. So that's just a bass line. You can change that a bit, but then I've got just like a kind of dry kit. So this is more like a session dry kit that's I want to turn my triggers on. So when you hear drums with, I guess, dry kits, you know, you're obviously hearing multiple drums being hit at once, which you can't do with your voice. So layering is what's key here. So we'll just lay down a beat and then we'll layer on a couple bits and then we'll see where we get. I don't like the rhythm of that bass line. I'm going to do that again. I only did it once, and that's one of those things as well. I should practice what I preach. We always say that, you know, when you're coming up with ideas, you want to do it a few times in your head first, so it's kind of cemented before laying it down. But boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. All right, let's quantize these. Let's see what we've got this time. So we've got a ghost note here that I didn't want to hit, so we just get rid of that to keep it. Alright, let's just do something like that. And
Grooving.
so all I've done there is a kick and a snare, because like I said, I'm not great at beatboxing and I kind of want these layered anyway, so okay. So I'm going to add another kick here as well, actually. And then, yeah, we'll layer up some hi-hats and then we'll move on to another instrument. I don't want to spend too long on this because, like I said, these sounds aren't great. But this is a demonstration, I guess, a bit of acoustic sounding sounds. Start that from the beginning, record into cell. Oh, what have I done here? Let's go again. What I've done is I'm recording.
Even if you quantize.
Yeah, I think I'm hitting. So sometimes you can find with the triggers, you might just want to occasionally retrain one. To make sure you got it right. There we go. Let's go now. Okay, when I quantized before, there's a weird rhythm that happens in the middle there, but let's... Oh my god, it gets pretty jazzy there.
Nice.
That's I don't... That's jazzy is a way of just saying when things get out of weird rhythm. Maybe not a great example, but... I mean, it's pretty weird sounding. I've got I'm not doing great a job on these drums here, but and then you can put layer or something like that on. But that's just layering is an important key, and if you spend some time actually, thinking about what you're doing and layering up drums and stuff, and then you can get something pretty decent. That was pretty rubbish. I can hear that back. It's not great, but. One thing as well to note on acoustic instruments, we'll go into this a bit more as well in a little bit, is that the instruments themselves obviously do things that you can't do with your voice naturally. So the settings in the plugin is going to be quite important. So with this organ, for example, with other instruments, if you go just woo, woo, up and down this pitch wheel, you get notes you don't really want. But with this organ, it's set in a way that I can go and it doesn't sound too terrible that I'm just going up and down, because it's just, I've got it set up in a way that just makes it a bit easier. So we're going to go into like sound design and plugins and how that works with the voice in a little bit, but so yeah, that's just something to note as well. Maybe you can do a better job than that terrible bit I've just done.
I don't know. No, I mean, I've set up different kinds of instruments. It's a very similar bass sound actually, but kind of.
Which one was it? Mine's just this contact scarab bass thing, but it's
Scarby. I love that
Scarby.
one.
Sorry, yeah.
So this is Ableton's guitar bass. So.
I think. Can you share your screen on Zoom?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So. Is that coming through?
Yeah. All good.
Yeah. So I mean, I have Dubler set to C sharp minor, and the sticky. I usually like using the stickiness at max. I mean, yeah, it's harder to change while singing, of course, but I just find that like when it's at max, I get more of the correct pitch results I want. But this can change for everyone, of course. And also about bass, while singing bass, the common like reflex of anyone would be trying to sing the low notes like bo 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 bo. But you find that Dubler is better, or maybe it's easier for people to express themselves at more correct pitches with high notes. So when singing bass, I always bring this octave to -2 or -1, depending on the sound.
Sorry, I've just saying, could you turn your voice up a bit? Can you just up your mic a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Hopefully that's a bit better.
How's that now? Is that a bit better?
Yeah, it sounds louder to me.
A bit better?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, when singing bass, just to repeat then what I just said, I like to bring the octave shift down and use high notes even while singing bass, because it's harder to sing with the like bo 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 low notes. It's hard to express the more correct pitch. And like I said, I have the stickiness at max. So just over a beat. Oh, that was what I recorded before. Oh, no sound coming through now, just a sec.
You've already put me to shame.
I always quantize.
Yeah, I've said this in a few videos. I often use record quantization. The problem is though, sometimes you can get what just happened to me before, where you quantize and what you listen back, it's not actually the idea you had, because you're just relying on like the grid rather than doing it yourself afterwards. But yeah.
And just gonna add some strings to that, but I'm just gonna first forgot to use this scale just to make sure staying in the key I want. So just put the C minor and put it up to C sharp. So I have this string patch now. It's with Solina. I hope you can see that on screen. Really one of my favorite maybe computer string plugins. And this is the Blue Strings preset. So here's how that sounds also with chord device. I love using Dubler with the chord device. I mean, anyone who watches my videos will also see that like all the channels always have an arpeggiator, the scale, the chord device. It just kind of takes the pressure off a bit and makes singing a bit easier. So forgot to raise the octave up. I mean, it's getting a bit. I left my a bit, but like when you're in the computer.
Yeah, so I think my internet's currently doing streaming and taking your
Oh yeah.
live thing as well. I think it was messing up, but I think we're good. We're back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
So
what
this
is? Can you just explain what exactly the chord and scale MIDI effects are doing there, based on what you're like inputting?
So with the chord device, it's adding semitone intervals basically. So this is the minor third, the minor seventh. Oh no, the minor third, the fifth, the minor seventh, a ninth on top, and an octave below to get some bass in there too. And what happens with the chord devices? So doubler, of course, you're locked to a scale. So you're locked to C sharp minor here. But then when you run it through this chord device, you might get notes that aren't in that because this is this is the Ableton realm now. So this +7 may not be within C minor, for example. So then I just came to this MIDI effects scale device here. Just put C minor down here and raised it to C sharp so that we're in C sharp minor. So what this device does is it corrects any of these notes that aren't in C minor and corrects them to C minor basically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And pretty much, I think pretty much all DAWs have a similar or variant of this kind of stuff. So there'll be like a MIDI chord thing or a MIDI scale thing. But yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a little look into non-electronic stuff. We can go into this a bit deeper. Let's see how much time we've got left. We can maybe come back to this and or have you got other non things?
I mean, I have one more thing, which is basically a lead patch, synth lead, but that we can get into that when we're talking about the pitch stuff because I use some of the pitch techniques with that one.
Cool, yeah. Well, maybe we can just move on to that now. So basically, we had a few questions which are all kind of variations of how can I get the best results when I'm using pitch and doubler? How can I make sure it's accurate as possible? What can I do? Blah, 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 blah. So what we'll do is, some people will have heard me go through this already. There's also some stuff out there in tips of pitch, but we'll just go through some of these other tips and then we'll talk about how they work with plugins and going there. So number one thing I'll start with, this might be more of an obvious one. Let me just share my screen here. Let me change.
I'll stop sharing for now.
Yeah, cool. That's all good. So number one thing is, as you saw me in Icon, is that we're locked to a scale. So we always want to make sure when we're in Dubler, when you're using pitch, that your notes are restricted to a scale or to a custom scale based on an example you've given. Because if you sing in a chromatic, you need basically an impossibly pitch perfect voice to get some tidy results. So the note restriction basically means that we can just keep the notes sounding melodic and requires a lot less tidier. So there's a few things when it comes to that. Basically, if you're in chromatic, if I put this to chromatic here, I've not got any instruments on. If you don't know what key or scale you're in, that's fine. You can start singing or humming a melody, and this auto key detect feature which you see here will basically listen to what you're doing and place you in a key based on that. So it's listened to that and it's put me in a G sharp major, which is great. I can change this as well at any point, but now when singing, the output's going to be a lot tidier and just a lot better. Another thing as well is this vocal note detector. This is slightly less known. I think maybe less people use it than actually use Dubler. But if you click on the vocal note detector, what it does is that it takes off any notes and is listening for an example. So you sing an example melody once. Say I've got a bass idea that's like 3 notes, like boom, 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 and I can just do that example once, and then it restricts the pitch wheel just to those notes. So you'll see if I click this, boom, 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 and it's giving me 3 notes now, which are basically those notes that I've put in. Boom, boom, boom. And if I put this bass back on, boom, boom, lower this octave, boom, 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 boom. And no matter what I do, I'm just going to keep to those 3 notes. So it's a lot tidier and just a lot more, it's going to give you better results when using the MIDI. Using the pitch. So also there's a suggested scale, so if I want to expand that idea, I can click on that and it's put me in it said those 3 notes are in a G sharp major pentatonic, and then now it's expanded the pitch wheel so I can add on some more stuff if I want. But that's the very first basic thing, which isn't to do with input or anything like that, but it's just making sure your notes are restricted properly in Dubler. So the next point is that when you've got your pitch wheel in a scale and you're in a key, is that you want to make sure your input now is also good. So there's a big difference between, like we said at the beginning of this of the stream, in confidence. There's a big difference between me going and me going ah. It's clearer, it's more confident, it's going to be able to detect my pitch more accurately. Also, the latency is going to be a lot better because the note is so much more detectable further earlier on in that note. So overall, it's just going to be, the more confident and clear you are, the better the MIDI output you've got is going to be as well. So that's the one part of it. The second part is making sure distinct notes are distinct and they're different. So if I've got a 3-note melody, instead of going there's pitch in between every single one of those notes that I don't actually want. I just want 3 notes, So I can separate them by doing that, by going instead of and gliding up between each one. And that just means that the results I'm going to get are just 3 notes and not all the ones in between that as well. There's different ways you can do that. I personally use a kind of more percussive sound at the beginning to go like ba ba ba, because it helps me separate them, but it's different for everyone. Well, I'm not sure about you. How do you work with that kind of side of things?
So definitely, like you said, syllables and like being very, adding a transient at the beginning of every note is important instead of just like kind of gliding your voice with it. But I think one of the things that helped me the most when I was first learning Dubler, and still helping me, is when you're singing, to sing to a chord progression or to a drone, and not to just take the microphone and start singing over drums or just singing over no backing track. So when you're, for example, so we're working in C sharp minor, like I said, I just added this pad sound here. Oh, sorry.
Do you want to share your screen again? I can flip over.
Oh, my voice is gone. Okay, so let me just solo myself and this drone. So this drone is just playing a C minor chord, for example. And you don't even have to use this in the end of your track, but because I hear this chord, my notes, when soloing over this or trying to find a melody over this, the notes I sing will be much more accurate, because to be able to sing the correct notes into the air or just over a drum beat or with no backing track, you have to have perfect pitch, basically. So this is definitely lay down a pad progression, a chord progression, or just have this a drone slightly in the background. And the other thing, the technique that really helped me with pitch, aside from learning which syllables to use and adding direct transients, like you said, is hearing myself very loudly when I sing. I know a lot of people won't like to do this because people kind of get cringed at their own voice a lot if you're not singers. So like when I start to get better results with melody and Dubler was when have Dubler as an audio input as well, or like I have one headphone off and I'm really hearing the notes I'm singing and how it's working with Dubler.
That's really interesting, because I feel the opposite, to be honest. I
Really?
think because I guess this kind of shows how you use it really does vary depending on the person. But for me, I know that my voice is nowhere near pitch perfect. I'm quite often quite far off, but I rely heavily on my note restrictions and key. So I don't like to hear my voice, because I know if I did, I'd be hearing it off, but I'm just relying on, on the notes that are coming out, and so I can just sing these melodies and hear them back, sounding nice and not rely on my voice. So I guess maybe I would be more accurate if I could hear it back, but I'm often flat or sharp or whatever, so I just like to.
I mean, it's just like when I first started working with Dubler, I would just blast the headphones. I was excited. I would blast the headphones to the max, have a beat going, and like try to sing a bass line over it. And even though I was locked to a scale, I wasn't listening to what I was doing at all. I was just messing around into the mic and not knowing what's going on. But I mean, like you said, also it's really important to have a bit of an idea what you're gonna do.
Yeah,
before starting to sing, or
that is one of the key thing as well. Is that when you're using the pitch, often, like you just said, you're just almost freestyling and improvising as you go along, rather than trying to recreate an idea in your head. So if you can just spend a little bit of time to cement what you're trying to do, the results you get are also more confident and more, and more accurate, and they don't show these
but
little wobbles and variations. Yeah.
but it's also not always about getting perfect results and Dubler playing back
Of course,
exactly
yeah.
what you sing. Like I'm sure the melodies of all time were written or recorded by someone just messing around, and then the engineer hitting quantize, and then you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I guess that
yeah,
moves into, I guess, what we'll talk about now, which is the
yeah,
pitch side of Dubler and accuracy, or what you kind of
yeah.
think is accuracy, what you're hearing back, and what role your DAW plays in that as well. So
Hmm.
I guess when it comes to music production in general, like sound design, very broad term, but plays a really important role in everything that's going on. So when I've got an instrument that I'm controlling with my voice, as well as my voice having all these characteristics, the synth itself is also going to have its own characteristics based on different parameters set within it. So the kind of the core things, I guess, most important here. Actually, let me share my screen and then I can
Sure,
explain this. So pretty much all synths or instruments within your DAW. So I've just got ES1 here just to make things simple, just like the stock, kind of just like a default thing. So in the synth, there's all this other stuff going on. But this section here is what we'll look at, which is attack, decay, sustain, and release. So ADSR. So attack, decay, sustain, and release basically generates the shape of the sound of the wave. So how long it is before it comes in, how long it lasts for, the release of it. And if I'm singing something or have an idea and I'm going like, and the synth that I'm hearing is very short, decay, and sustain, by the time I moved up, the note's already finished, it clunks up, it sounds bad, and it doesn't quite match my idea. So let me just show you an example of that. This is what this is factory G sort sounds like. Ba, 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 ba. You hear that? Ba, 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 ba.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Ba, ba, ba. So that's got quite a long release. It's also got a short attack, so it has that clicky sound at the beginning, that like ba, 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 ba. Turn this up a bit. So if I move between notes, it sounds really messy, and if I'm going it doesn't sound very great, and it sounds
There's
like
some
it's
overlap, right?
yeah, there's overlap, and because there's a really short attack, it's clicking every time, and it makes this little jaunty kind of sound. So actually, my idea where I'm going like, I like the sound of this, for example, but I'm doing like a so I might just try and spend a little bit of time trying to match this to my voice, so I can just raise the attack a little bit, maybe put this release down. And now the synth is starting to match that, what I'm doing on my voice a bit more, where I'm going, and the synth's going, wah, 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 instead of the duh, 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 duh. So this is a little bit of how you can use these kind of things. And ADSR will be in every synth and everything in whatever DAW. They all use these different features. So just molding your instrument to your voice or your idea means that the idea in your head is portrayed more accurately, and it doesn't seem a lot messier, and it doesn't require less cleanup. Glide is also an important one. If I go I might want a little bit of glide in there, but that information, unless you have pitch bend on, isn't conveyed in MIDI notes. It's as if you're just hitting the note on a keyboard with your voice, and that's what Dubler's putting out. So if I up this a little bit, it glides up a little bit, and now I get like a wah 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 with it. And then you can go more in depth if you want. So I can start now just getting really involved with my voice and this pitch kind of stuff. So there's a cutoff here. So say I want to get even more involved, and I can map this cutoff. If I go to control services, learn assignment, and then in Dubler, click the R vowel. Cool. And now basically I've got another thing that's matching my voice, whereas if I want to wah wah, woo, wow wow, yeah 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 yeah, yeah 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 yeah. I just want to change those parameters a little bit. So I can set minimum and maximum values. I wanted it to be a bit higher because it was going too low. So I can set that to 40. Turn this octave up. So that's just like a bit of basically getting involved with the synth you're controlling and actually matching it a bit to the idea. But now, if I want to do... Sorry, I'll just... Yeah, go on. Go on, what were you saying?
I was just gonna say about this, what you're doing. I mean, it's a really good idea to do mappings like this and like work on the sound design and map it to the vowels and the expression in Dubler, because this kind of adds more value to one note. So when you're singing into Dubler and you're making a melody, you might feel pressure that you have to sing a lot of notes, but just sustaining few notes and then using this expression can basically add value to the notes and add interest to your melody basically, and not make you have to sing so many notes.
Yeah, I'll show you as well how this works in terms of, so this is kind of the setting I had before. It was this longer thing, but now if I want to do a quicker melody, it's more like if I do this with these settings in the same synth, it's got this long release and it's messy, so I can just lower all these settings, and I can do quicker melodies now. Turn this glide off, and I can do these fast runs. And you can almost do arpeggiated lines like. So basically, it's making sure that your settings match, your voice and your idea. Do you? Let me swap this back around to Zoom. Is there anything else on that side of things you wanna add?
I mean, no, I made a similar sound, lead sound also, and also taking into mind the plucky aspect, like you said, and also using a vowel. So I'll just show that quickly. So again, to emphasize this point of having a drone to sing over while experimenting with synth leads or lead melodies, that really helps. So I'll just play the drone and a drum loop, and then here's the lead. So what I did was I matched this vibrato here to the E. So bye. Oh, that goes. Bye. Oh, I lost my sound. Just a sec. Okay. Bye. So when I stress the E syllable, then the vibrato knob goes up. See when I'm talking E. And that's able to, like I said, add more value to a note I sustain by making it more interesting. And let me just jam over this maybe. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's good.
Something like that, yeah.
It's quite fun hearing the kind of the little e at the end.
Yeah,
but it's adding
exactly.
these things you never thought of.
Funny
Yeah. Let me. I don't know. I'm just going in at the end. But it's adding. We've got the chat here. Cool. So. Sorry, I'm just reading. I haven't seen the chat for a while, so I'm just going back now to read through some of it, because whilst we've been doing this, there's been some notes in there. Cool. Someone asked about whistling, so let me show you whistling. I'm not a great whistler, but
I'm a pretty good whistler, but I haven't had much results with it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'll show you. So there's a few little tips that are a little bit different for. So
I think you have to
first
bring
thing,
the octave down like
yeah. So
-3 or something.
yeah, first thing to note is obviously whistling. What you're outputting is so much higher than normal, so you want to lower it. So I'm not amazingly confident whistler, but also you notice here is holding the mic below your mouth, because if you're whistling, you're blowing air at the same time, and that's going to blow on the mic, so that's going to confuse the pitch a bit. So I mean, that's a lot of my whistling not being great.
Been low density, right?
Sorry, what was that?
Maybe even worth lowering the input sensitivity, so like when you blow the air, it doesn't necessarily pick that up.
Yeah, you can also adjust like input level as well to match that, but doing it over the mic, not directly in, being confident. Someone says Centorial for learning synth is another recommendation. So that's based on what we're just saying. Yeah, it's great to, whilst you're going on in these things, is to get involved with the synth stuff and learn that side. Learning synthesis is really fun, and it will help you get more out of Dubler as well. The more you know about these things. So I'm saying, is this what is this program again? This might have been, I'm in Logic, which is available only on Mac, and Icons on Ableton, which is available on anything, I think, pretty much, Windows and Mac. And that was, I was just using some default ES1 thing. So someone was also, how can I turn off velocity control? So to make the drums hit at the same level. Yeah, so triggers, each trigger has its own velocity control, which is here. So you can turn it off or on individually. So if I want, say, the velocity to be exactly the same for my kick, snare, and rim shot or a tom or something, I can turn this off and I can leave this on, and my hi-hats will be velocity sensitive. If I want them all to be the same, it's this button here. Actually, I'm not showing my screen. Hold on. I'm explaining things. Let me go back. Yeah, right. This is what I'm saying, sorry. Velocity control here. If you click on the trigger, and the trigger settings in the bottom, what pops up, you can turn it on and off. If it's off, it means that it will always be the same velocity. If it's on, it will mean that you can get dynamic with your drums. You can do it individually, like I just said. If you want hi-hats to be velocity sensitive but the rest not, you can have that on and the rest off. But yeah, to make sure they hit at the same level is this control, that control here.
I think with trigger velocity, I mean, I've had some really good results with just trying to sing, like with velocity control enabled, just trying to sing at the same volume consistently, but when I want to like experiment with velocity, moving closer and farther from the mic, but just trying to keep the same volume and letting the length between me and the mic dictate the velocity. That can give you some more control as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just reading through some of these. I've missed out so much. I've been trying to.
Oh, cool.
I've right, where are we at now? Let me move our screens back. We also got someone saying wind guard, twist and double. Yeah, that would work as well if you've got either a cover or a pop shield or wind guard. That would help. Someone's asking, has there been development towards an iOS app now that Apple Silicon is a thing? So at the moment, we're just focusing on the desktop version. There's plenty of things that I'm sure people have heard us talk about that we want to focus on. So for now, we're just focusing on the desktop and developing Dubler as it is. But hopefully in the future, you know, when, as we grow or there's more opportunities, we can start to expand. But yeah, for now, we're just focusing on this desktop version. Yeah, someone's saying adds attack latency as well with whistling. Yeah, that's one of those things, kind of what we spoke about before, where for me, because I'm not a great whistler, I'm kind of going like, and then the pitch comes a lot longer after I've started whistling, because it's the way it is. But the same with your voice. If I go, the latency is going to feel longer because that's how long it takes for me to actually hear a pitch sound.
And also, like, I mean, with whistling, the big issue, like, because of you said the air thing, it picks up a very low note, and then the whistle is a very high note, so there can be some jumps sometimes between. But I mean, I'm sure,
Yeah.
like you said, with distancing the mic, there can be a way around it. But you have to be a pretty good whistler.
Yeah. Someone was saying, why do I get double notes when recording with Dubler? So one thing, so there's two things that could be happening. One thing is that you might have the triggers and the controls on at the same time. Triggers send out MIDI notes the same as the pitch. So say you can see here, this is sending out a C1, and that's the same as a C1 on the keyboard, the same on the pitch wheel. But for the triggers, it's assigned to a drum or sample. But if you're recording in on an instrument and you have both on, and then you've not separated the MIDI channels, if you're going like ba 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 and your like p, p sound might be hitting a trigger. So let me show you an example. Ba 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 ba. Let me turn this up. Ba ba ba. Ba ba ba. If I just record this in here. Ba 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 ba. Now if I look at this info, this C1, I didn't actually want this, but they're all going in at the same time as the start of these notes, so I'm getting kind of double notes, which I don't want. So one way around that is just making sure that the MIDI channel is split properly, and one way of doing that is going through your DAW. If you go to voclear.com/tutorials, there's tutorials for every DAW for how to do this. Or alternatively, which is more simple, you can just turn off one of them to make sure you're only getting info from the other side. So that's one thing that could have been happening. Another thing, if you're talking about double notes, is basically on the pitch side, which is you're hitting maybe a couple of notes, say if they're two semitones apart, and you're just getting them through. So those sorts of things is about basically the tips we spoke about before, which is like separating notes. If I've got two notes here that are semitone, and my stickiness is kind of like pretty low, for example, it's going to wobble between those two notes a lot, and it's going to chuck out a couple of notes like doesn't take much to go between the two of them. So you can make sure you're articulating notes properly, ba 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 instead of and making sure you're being confident, and that should hopefully clear up the notes and stop any kind of separate ones coming out that you don't want. So someone's also asking about the data. So data sharing, I think I'm not the person to ask on this. I think what's the extent of data sent with the so are you talking about the data sharing here? That's basically just like I believe information on how the software has been used. There's no and like say sample recordings of triggers and stuff. But apologies if I've not got the right thing there of what you're asking. Okay, I've missed a lot, but I think we've caught up with most things going on there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Basically, that data sharing thing is just like say like samples of triggered sounds, so we can kind of hopefully in the future improve things like how the triggers are trained and various bits and bobs. Yeah. Let me move this. Yeah, I think hopefully that's covered quite a few things on pitch. Apologies if it wasn't particularly clear, but there is a video you can search on our YouTube. There's tips for pitch and tips for triggers, which kind of go into all these different things that we've just spoken about, but a little bit more concise and a little bit more in depth. So if you want to kind of listen to that back, then yeah, tips for pitch is one I'd recommend checking out, and also tips for triggers if you want to go on. So is there anything else? We've been on about roughly an hour now.
I have just a couple more. I have just a couple more tips that just.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I'd love to share, like when people.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So just two things. One, when you're experimenting with melodies or bass lines or anything over a beat, turning down the BPM can really help, and you'll be surprised after improvising at a slow BPM. For example, you want to make a house kind of track at 125 BPM. Bring the beat down to 70 BPM, experiment over that. then increase the tempo again, and you'll have a fast, nice melody that you sang more accurately. That maybe because the tempo was lower. So yeah, just experiment with lowering the BPM while trying to sing melodies. That's one tip I can give, and one more is don't be afraid to go crazy with it. Try to get into a very creative space and sing a lot of notes, do a long recording, and then just hit quantize again, increase the BPM if you sang it slower, and you'll be surprised with some of the great melodies that come out. Yeah, that's just the last thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, sorry, I've been looking through the chat as well. Someone has said, I'm not sure if someone was talking about the transpose in MIDI effects. Open the transpose box in MIDI effects and use no wrong notes. It will amaze you. Try it now, as a lot of people don't know about it, maybe not even you. Are you on about Logic or are you on about Ableton? I'm just looking now. Let's try it out. This is not something I know about. So this is Transposer. You said no wrong notes. I'm not sure if this is what you're on about. This says can't go wrong. And say...
Which transposer?
So this is a transposer MIDI effects in Logic. I think it's kind of the similar thing where it just like locks the
Oh, okay, like the
MIDI.
Scale device in Ableton. Okay.
Yeah. But say this is in a C minor pentatonic. If we match it to C minor pentatonic, I don't know if this is what you're talking about. Maybe, and it says can't go wrong, so I presume it's just restricted. It's hard to tell whether that's the same as if it was off. Let's turn it on and off and see if there's a difference. I mean, yeah, that's the one. Okay, yeah, I mean, that sounds like it might have been a little bit tidier. I'm not sure exactly. Like I said, maybe I'd have to do some proper testing. But that's a good tip, I guess, in terms of MIDI effects. You can turn these things off, set it to the key in here, and then as well as our key lock that's going through, I guess there's another layer you could have of kind of like... what would you call it? Note correction, yeah, to kind of like remove any unwanted things. You can do this as well in Dubler with like specific notes on and off in there, and it looks like you can do the same here on this thing. But use the Dubler settings for scale. I think there's a little bit delay on the chat, but yeah, we'll look into that, and maybe that's a good tip. But for anyone who's watching who's on Logic, maybe also have a play around on the MIDI effects here and go to Transposer. So you can go Transposer here, yeah. Alright, cool. Well, yeah, that's, I guess, hopefully that's covered quite a few things for now. Hopefully in the future we can go back to kind of streams that we used to do a bit before, where we'd kind of make beats and stuff. They're a bit, they're quite fun. This one was just, I guess, an introduction. We can go back in and answer some questions that have been floating around for a while. So hopefully we've answered those. As usual, if there's any suggestions or stuff you want to see, we're trying to get these things up and running more again.
Yeah.
You can post them on the comments on any of our social posts. We keep an eye on them all. You can send us a message via the website. If you want to see something specific, let us know, and we'll try and do that, and we'll put it on our list of things to do. So yeah, just let us know. I think that's all good. Anything else?
Great.
No? Alright, nice one. Well, hopefully this will be a monthly thing again, so we'll see you for another live stream in sort of end of March time, and we'll try and make that one a little bit less wordy and a little bit more Dubler heavy, so we can just make some stuff using Dubler. But all right, thanks for watching everyone, and
thanks guys.
we'll see you again soon. Bye.